Record, and I think we are good. Hello there, Miguel. Thank you for joining us. This is the second YR World web recording, and today we're joined by Miguel, who's joining us from Mexico. Now, Miguel is involved in something I'm very interested in, is technical documentation. So thanks for joining us, Miguel. First off, tell us about yourself and where you're joining us from and what you do.
Hello, I'm in my bedroom. I'm in Mexico City. My name is Miguel Guzman Macedo, and I'm a Julia open source contributor and community member. And I've done a few things to try and help the translation efforts for the Spanish. So I faced a little bit of pain, but I wouldn't say I'm the world expert on it.
Good
So,
stuff. So you're in Mexico. You're tell us about the open source data science community there, like the R community, the Python community, the Julia community. What sort of community
so
do you have there?
R and Python. So R and Python are extremely established communities. COVID notwithstanding, there's R and Python meetups. R is put on CVs and it's desired for job openings. Universities teach it. You can find courses online and people giving tips to each other. It's big. Vibrant. There's conferences that come here as well. It's very well established. It's currently myself and a few other adventurous people, but R and Python are just dominant when it comes to data science here.
Good stuff. And the Julia community, you're a part of the Julia community, which is growing as well. So, just actually common to all of the communities is the language barrier problem. Participating in the community when English is not your first language, like the any technical community. So obviously you've actually got very good English, but just in general for expanding out to, let's say, all your peers in Mexico, what is the reality of it? What's the experience of it?
Well, the reality is that very few privileged minorities get to speak English fluently, and when you need to perform a technical task and it's in a foreign language and it's technical language and it's a hard double bind, so it gets worse. And I started translating because I was taking a Julia course, and then I saw one of my friends uh, just like look at the screen and everything was in English and the manual was in English, and he just looked so defeated, and I just said like, wow, this sucks. Maybe I could help out with some free translation, and that's how I got started.
So this is you've undertaken a very interesting project and uh, to tackle the translation of technical documents. So tell us all about it, because it's really why we invited you, so to speak. So just from the start, like it's
Yeah,
what the problem you faced and how you tackled it.
right. So I haven't translated the entire manual yet. I've translated a few tutorials. So the problem has many faces. The first one is trying to get people to help you out because there's going to be a lot of manual work involved. Then you want to try and make the experience as easy as possible, and then lastly, you're going to have to try and keep up with the language. So it's not good enough. Like R is still in development. Bugs are being patched. Improvements are coming in. Libraries need up-to-date documentation. So there's cruft and bit rot that happens, and you need a system that can help you move along as well. It's not a one and done project. So there needs to be, an organization and a tool that helps you keep up with, semantic versioning or changes in the ecosystem. And that's not an easy task. But I mean, the good thing is that this problem is replicated from English, which is the dominant language, into every other target language. So so the Chinese speakers and the Korean speakers have done amazing work when it comes to translating the Julia manual, and they have their own versions of it. But it's very hard to get the French and the Koreans and the Chinese and the Spanish speakers to come together and say like, it's worth enough to invest our time into building this one tool that everyone's going to use. And so that's a draw. It's not a fun time. And people would rather be coding something else likely. Although, it's useful. It's tragedy of the commons kind of thing, or collective action problem rather.
So I understand that you used online tools to try and automate the problem as much as possible, to trying to help things along.
Yeah, so one of the conclusions that you come to is very likely you are unlikely to face a hero contributor who will just crank out the manual in a couple days. Or if you want to pay someone for the technical translation, that's going to be a pretty penny. And one of the ways in which you can ease or diminish the barriers to access and increase shared platforms so that work isn't duplicated is to just use something that's out of the box. And so one of the websites that used to do that for Julia is called Transifex. I did a bunch of translations there, but it was quite finicky. And probably, I'm not an expert on this, but what I would encourage people is to look at people who have already worked on this and solved on this problem. There's one called Pontoon. Pontoon is the solution that the Rust language uses for translating their website. So if you just Google rustlang.org or whatever, that landing page with all the different language options uses Pontoon as a backend, and it's open sourced by Mozilla, and you can set up your own instance. And so if you have capable web people, they will likely be able to help your community set up the tool. And what's cool about it is that you could just click on it, log in. I think someone has to give you permission or something, but after that, you click on translating from English onto Chinese or French or Arabic, and you just start contributing. And so you don't need to be an expert on Git flow or pull requests, which is what we're facing with. And you can just serve a friendlier user website. There's a couple other hitches that it's saving you from, and it can help out with automatic machine translation. So sometimes you can just click, yes, that sounds good, and you can just keep going because translators are good now sometimes when they're not a stochastic parrot. But yeah.
Good stuff. So there's a lot of learnings here that can be made for technical writing is still dominated in English, and as you sort of said, it takes a lot of time to or effort or cost into translating it into other languages. So do you feel that this presents a way for communities, let's say a French-speaking community in West Africa, let's say, just as an example, that they can combine their efforts using these tools like Pontoon and try and replicate what the Chinese and Koreans did? Or is there some sort of example to be drawn there?
Oh, no. Yeah, small clarification. I agree with the general purpose of your question, but as far as I know, the Chinese and Korean Julia teams that did the translations just did everything through pull requests on Markdown files via GitHub. I don't know if they used any other tools. You'd have to ask them. As to your first question of could this help other people? I'm not the one to say what is most convenient for people and what their choices are with limited time and resources.
Yeah.
But if they do find that having a website translate onto their language useful, then setting this up. So if someone goes on and sets up this website, it's much easier to just click add Greek or add, I'm going to say Congolese as an option, than to have these people reinvent the wheel again. And so, deduplication of work is a good thing. That's what computers are for. So someone's figured this out, and it's probably not a good idea to keep on trucking on through, just trying to do it. And that it might not be the best tool for every case, but it's worth looking into at least.
Yes, of course. That's so. Yeah, the interesting thing about the Korean and Chinese example was more so that the community came together, or a lot of people in the community came together to jointly collaborate and develop the project, which is very encouraging. It's very, very encouraging.
Yeah, they are a huge effort.
Yeah, great stuff. That's
and so there's
go on.
There's a chicken egg problem from trying to build a critical mass of people to start translating, and then having something translated so you can build a critical mass of people to get the community forward. And I guess setting up a website or one of these friendly user interfaces to ease this process is, I guess, one way to get around that problem, or to
Yeah.
at least to diminish barriers to entry.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for that. So, uh, this is probably very specialist knowledge, but for example, the main languages of business languages would probably be French, English, Spanish. Would you know anything about any other languages, like let's say Swahili or Tagalog, like that have tens of millions of speakers but are
So,
localized?
excellent question. Yeah, so I'm very lucky that I've been translating to and from Spanish, or rather to Spanish. And so language models are probably not as hard to translate from English because, they share a Latin structure. I've known that Chinese is an incredible hurdle for translation tools, and that might be a problem. So that so I can't speak as to the quality of all internationalization considerations that these sorts of software tools may have. However, it's nice that people can figure that out as they go on. Like
Yeah.
you can, as far as I know, at least Pontoon lets you opt into the machine translation part. So if you think it's trash, you can just rewrite it or keep what you need. But what is good is that it lets you iterate quickly. Like if a string comes up and it's like, hey, like language, then I would write, este es un lenguaje de programación, blah, blah. And then when I click next or submit, it goes into a queue so that another person can review it, and I get the next thing so that I can start translating without having to context switch. So if that were to happen in, Chinese or Tagalog or este, some other language, I would hope that the uh, the system can handle at least different encodings and languages such that Arabic doesn't get worked from right to left, and at least all the characters get displayed appropriate where it's done. But I'm hopeful. I'm almost confident that they went full on UTF-8 handling and at least took the pains to do that. But otherwise, it's still free and open source software, and people can help contribute to that. So there's at least hope that it can get fixed.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. So obviously, yes, again, the matter of scripts, like it might be one case for languages that use Latin scripts, like for example, English, French, and so on, with Chinese scripts being, probably a separate consideration, but who knows? Thanks very much for that. So we're going to let you go. Thanks very much, Miguel. Just before we go, just a quick word. We're recording this in February 2021, and we're in the middle of the COVID crisis in Ireland and in Mexico. So just how are you getting on there, and how are you coping? And how's your career going?
Well, I started trying to do a bit more exercise and cooking, and but other than that, I've been extremely fortunate, and yeah, it's not been the best of times, but we're hanging on. I hope that Ireland isn't doing too bad as well.
It was bad for a while, but things have
Hola.
improved now. Yeah. So that's great. Thanks very much, Miguel. I think we leave it there and let you get back to work and get back to your work in Mexico. And I appreciate that. I think you've offered a lot of
No
great
problem.
insights.
And yes, and obviously, if you want to ask any more questions, I'm definitely not an expert, but I can maybe point any of you in the right direction. Feel free to read Discourse or find me on Twitter at @MiguelRaz_RAZ. And
Okay, we'll add that to
feel free to ping away.
Yeah, we'll add that to the YouTube channel description. So if you want, it should be down there when the video gets released. Okay, Miguel, thanks very much,
Sure thing.
and we'll leave it there.
Take care, Kevin.